Thanks for tuning in today to another episode of Front Porch Conversations here at Advent Christian Village. Our site this morning is at the Harmony Center, a good place to have harmony. So I want to introduce you to our guest, Alisa Staats. Alisa, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we're going to learn more about you and help the other members know more about you as well. Okay. You currently live in Dallinghouse, is that correct? And when did you move to Dallinghouse?
I moved to Dallinghouse in July of 2020.
But you're not new to the area, is that right?
No, ma'am. I lived in Butterfield Acres from 2011 to 2018. And then I spent 2 years in South Carolina with my sister and brother-in-law.
But we'll talk more about that later. And where did you grow up?
Jasper. I was born in Valdosta. And 3 days later, I came back to Jasper, and that's where I stayed until I went to college.
So for our visitors who don't know where Jasper is, it's right over the state line.
Right.
When you come down 75, it would be the
second exit.
Second exit, that's right.
Jasper. Yes.
And what was it like growing up there?
The first 6 years we lived in town. And then after that, we moved into the country. So most of my memories are of living in the country. We were 10 miles out. And so it was of daddy farming and gardening. And he raised cows and hogs. And so it was a typical country childhood.
I recently read a book that was written by an author who had grown up in Jasper. And it was The Memory of a Large Christmas by Lillian Smith.
Oh, okay.
You should. They have it at the library, and it was one of our book reviews for the month. It was fascinating, and it described the whole growing up on a farm with a large family.
But one died at 3 weeks in like 46, 45, somewhere. So well before I knew them. And then there were 5 of us. But when I was born, my oldest sister was 21. Mm-hmm. So the next one older than me is 8 years older. So mom and daddy basically raised 3 families.
I can imagine.
So it was for most of my grown up life, it was just me.
Well, that's what my life was like too. There was only one of me. Where after you graduated from high school in Jasper, right. Hamilton County.
In 77, and then I went to East Tennessee Baptist Hospital in Knoxville, Tennessee to train as an RN and attended classes at the University of Tennessee there. Mm-hmm. But that was just not my calling. It was not, my intention was to go to LPN school in Live Oak and work in a doctor's office. Mm-hmm. But I had a sister who believed in higher education, and you shot for the moon when you went for anything, and she demanded that I not go for less than an RN. And she lived in Knoxville, so she convinced me to come to Knoxville to go to school, and it was just too far from home. I had always been a homebody. I was mom and daddy's baby, and that's where I was supposed to be at. So I stayed. It was a 3-year program, and I stayed for a year and a half of it, and left and came back home. It just wasn't.
And did you ever become an LPN?
No, I didn't. I did get my AA degree in Lake City, but I went to work at Occidental Chemical Corporation in White Springs, and that's where I stayed.
And has been a big employer in that area.
Yes, it has been.
Through its various names, right?
Yeah, it's on its like 4th or 5th name now.
And that's phosphate mining?
Yes, the phosphate mining industry.
Which is big in this part of the state, or has been at least.
Yes. Well, yeah, because there's a lot of the phosphoric soil influence.
Uh-huh. Alisa, where did you live when you went to work for Occidental?
When I first went to work, I was still with my parents. I'd come back home from college and stayed with them. Mm-hmm. And after working a little while, I rented a place in Lake City.
And that was a short commute.
That was a really short commute. So that was nice. It was nice to actually be in town. I could actually go pick up supper on my way to work.
And I know you were married. When did you meet your husband?
I met my husband through Occidental in 82. I met him on St. Patrick's Day of 82. When people got off work from Occidental, there's a very small town by the name of Genoa, just outside of White Springs. And it had one store that was a very small store that was previously a gas station, but it had a huge pecantry in the front of it, and it was simply called the pecantry. And that's where people would stop on when they got off work to unwind and chat and go in and get something to drink and just sit around. And I met him there. One of the other ladies I worked with was stopped, and so I stopped too and walked over, and she told me to go away. She said, "I think I've got a live one, go away." And she was of course joking, so I stayed, and she told him that he had to show me his impression of a turtle. So he took the insides of the hard hat that he wore out, and he had false teeth, and so he took the false teeth out, and he put the hat down way over his head, and then made this awful face, and he did look like a turtle. So it surprised people when I tell them that's where I met him, and I still married him. But his humor was great.
Well, that's important in a relationship.
So, and he passed away in November of 2010.
Well, and he had children?
Yes, he had 5 children when we were married. Only one was under the age of 18. So we had Doug with us. He lived with us several times during his growing up years and after he was an adult. And the other 3 of them were in the area, and one was in Texas. His daughter lived in Texas. 4 sons were here, 3 of which had worked at Occidental. And they had, between them, had 7 grandchildren. Gave Dale 7 grandchildren, 2 of which are mine. Mm-hmm. And they were Doug's children, and they've always called me Grandma, and they came to see me Christmas. So Bryson and Wiley are really special to me.
That's great to have that intergenerational connection,
yes,
isn't it? What brought you to Advent Christian Village or to this area?
I learned about the village in '89. My husband's family, growing up, they were split up. They were adopted out because their parents were alcoholics. Mm-hmm. And so the children were split. I think Dale was like 4. He had a twin brother, and they were put into the boys' orphanage in Jacksonville. And they were adults when they finally found their family. And they tried several times to get back together. And the kids, they did an initial reunion, and they stayed close for years. But not being raised together, they had no connectiveness. And so there was a falling out, and they just quit seeing each other for years. And after we married, for Dale's 50th birthday, because he was significantly older than I was. He was 21 years older than I was. But, so for their 50th birthday, my sister-in-law decided to get all the siblings back together. There were 7 of them. And so she contacted everybody and gave a surprise party for her husband, DeWitt. And so after that, they wanted to start gathering up again. And Esther had worked out here at some point in time, so she suggested we do it at Dowling Park. And that's the first time I'd ever really heard about it. I back that up. It wasn't the first time I heard about it. The first time I came here. Uh-huh. I had heard about it earlier. My mother had a first cousin who actually lived in Butterfield Acres. She was one of the first, she and her husband were one of the first residents in there. It was Jesse and John Goolsby. But when we came in '89 for the first Staats reunion, was the first time I had been here and actually enjoyed all the parts of Dowling Park. So we did a Staats reunion for 4 or 5 years, and then it began to dissolve again. Mm-hmm. And so in '94, I began hosting my family reunion, which my mother was a Smith, so we had a Smith reunion. And she had 9 siblings, so all the living siblings were invited, and their children and grandchildren and great-grand in some case. And so for 15 years, we had that family reunion here. And that's when we really fell in love with the village. Mm-hmm. and we would rent Walker and Smith Cottage and lodge rooms. And then after the first year, which we did it at the conference center, we began to rent the Harmony room.
So this is a familiar place.
Right. This room's bringing back a lot of memories of some really good times. And so when my mother began to age, I convinced her to come down here. And so she moved in February of '99 and lived here until she passed away in 2012. And she lived in Carter House, then went to Dossier Manor, and then to Good Sam. And that's when I knew one day I would live here.
And now you have somebody else in your family living here,
yes,
too.
I have my sister Judy and her husband Dan who are here, and I'm loving that. They're in Dowling House with me. They've been here 3 months, and it's great because I spent, like I said, the year before I moved to stay with them, they came and stayed with me a year because Dan was having some health issues. Mm-hmm. And so when they left, they convinced me to come back with them because the parsonage they were at had an attached apartment. So I stayed in that apartment for 2 years. And so he's almost 70 and he decided to retire. And so they had been thinking about Dowling Park. So they finally decided to come. And yeah, I love having them.
That's like a family reunion. What are the things that you and your sister have found you enjoy doing together at this point?
We just love to be together and chat. And we visit family in the area. In fact, one of the cousins just initiated us having a get-together every 3 months. So we're going to get together again next month. The last time she did an afternoon tea. This time one of the other cousins is going to do a brunch. And so we're really enjoying that. And we just like to go back to Jasper and kind of look around and revisit old memories. But other than that, I can't say we do a lot together because I'm a shopper and Judy isn't. So she misses out on some of that. But she's good about going to the doctor with me. And we went and looked at Christmas lights and we got to eat. And sometimes I go with them to church because they've been visiting various churches in the area. And renewing old friendships because it's been a long time since they'd lived here.
Other than family, what makes Advent Christian Village special to you?
I have had problems with depression in the past, and to me, I love the fact that it's all a little cocoon. For the most part, everything you need is right here. You know, I do have doctor's appointments, specialists that I have to go to who are outside Dowling Park. But for the day-to-day stuff, you know, everything's here. I don't have to get in the car and go anywhere. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And the fact that Dowling Park supports its people, and if I had to have lunch brought in, or if I need groceries, I can call and order them, and the pharmacy will deliver. So, you know, you truly don't have to leave your room if you don't feel up to it. And that, to me, is just a really nice option.
Well, I believe before you actually moved into the village, you were volunteering here as well.
Yes, I already volunteered. I began when Mama was in Dossier Manor driving for people because they had trouble getting people who would drive for Dossier. Mm-hmm. And so I still do that to a smaller extent. I haven't really gotten back into it wholeheartedly since I've been here, but there are certain people that I drive for. And then I enjoy working with Eleanor at Christmas to wrap Christmas presents. And just kind of whatever anybody calls and says, would you help with this?
And Eleanor's really good about doing that, isn't she?
She's very good at her job. We're going to miss her greatly when she retires.
But she'll be around.
Yes, she will.
That'll be nice as well.
Yes.
And, you know, what I like about volunteering here is there are just so many opportunities, but you also can find things that are in your niche and say, yes, I can do it today, but next week I can't.
That's right. Yeah, because my mother had volunteered at Twice Nice and loved it. She just loved meeting the people and seeing the different people who came in and telling them about Dowling Park and the different activities. And so it's, and I may broach into something that's a little more, because up until now I haven't done anything that was a set schedule. Mm-hmm. And so I may change that and do something that's a repeat activity more on a regular basis.
What are some of your other interests?
I love to read. Books are wonderful, and I do Sudoku, and I watch lots of television, unfortunately, but I enjoy that too. And then just getting out and going. Like I said, I love to shop, so I just walk around and look. And I just joined the bus committee that's reformed.
Oh, good.
So.
And I know people are looking forward to going on outings on the bus.
Yes, greatly. It's wonderful that has started back up again.
When did you start finding your faith personally?
I was young. I wish my mother had kept better records of that kind of stuff than she did, because my guess is I was somewhere between 10 and 12, but we were always in church. Always. That was not, I was raised in a household, that was not an option. You were in church. My father taught Sunday school. He was a Sunday school director. He was a deacon. And so we were raised in church. All of our activities centered around church growing up, and especially being in the country. Mm-hmm. That was the one thing we did do on a regular basis. But I was saved at a tent revival in Jasper that they did for a week-long series, and it was across from what is now the high school. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not the new. They built a new high school outside of town, but the high school that was in town, it was across from that in an open field, and I still have vivid memories of that evening.
And I don't know this. Is that something that's common in the South and not other places?
It used to be. It's very rare to hear of a tent revival now.
I can't remember ever seeing one a tent set up in years.
It's very rare, but in my growing years, it was very common. They would do, all the ministers from the area were invited, and they were there so that the people who did go to the front, they could minister to, and they normally would have a guest speaker come in, and they truly did have just a very large tent, would set it up wherever somebody had an open field that they could use. And so, it was really common in this area.
Well, I grew up in North Florida, also south of Jacksonville, and I do remember them there, but I don't remember reading about them other places or people talking about them.
Yeah. Well, no,
but somebody will call and correct me.
Right. Yeah, they were here. I mean, they were just part of my childhood.
And then you've remained in church and...
Yes, I don't attend as regularly as I used to and as I should, but I have some major back issues, and it's hard for me to go and sit that long. So, and it's hard for me to get moving in the mornings. If they had church at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it'd be easier for me, but, so mornings are kind of difficult for me some days, so...
Well, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
As far as this whole area of North Florida where you grew up, how do you think it's changed the most?
Just the businesses that have moved in, all the shopping malls are new. The restaurants, all the chain restaurants that have moved in. You don't have the mom and pop shops anymore. And you don't have the mom and pop shop grocery stores that we had. So it's just all the new industry.
This area has a lot of natural resources too. Now, I don't know, does the Swanee River go through Jasper?
It doesn't go through Jasper. It goes... Hamilton County is actually only land connected to Georgia. It's got rivers on 3 sides of it, on 3 sides. Okay. So the Swanee River borders like a portion of 2 sides of Hamilton County. And then the Withlacoochee comes down.
Was the river a part of your childhood growing up?
No, because my mother taught us to be deathly afraid of water.
Oh.
She was very scared of it, and so the only time we went to the river was in the spring because my daddy loved the wild Easter lilies. And we would go down behind a neighbor's house, and we would pick the Easter lilies. But we did not swim in the Swanner.
Well, different people have different experiences
Right.
growing up. But are the wild Easter lilies smaller than?
Yes, they are.
I don't remember ever seeing them until a few years ago, and I was driving to Perry, I think, and they were all along in the ditches, and they were beautiful.
They are beautiful.
And I don't know that I've seen any right around here either.
I have seen a few on the road in July, though.
Have you?
But just a few. They don't seem to be as prolific.
It's plentiful.
Plentiful, as they use it. Better word, yes.
Well, it's neat knowing what's special to a part of the country,
Right.
and it sounds like a nice memory for you as well. What advice would you give a young person today?
Oh, my goodness. Think about retirement early and begin saving early. And I know now that the younger generation changes occupations multiple. I think they say, you go through like 5 occupations, 5 different career choices. And it makes it really tough for retirement. You don't go to a company now and stay for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, it would just simply be, go ahead and start your retirement savings early and leave it alone and let it grow and be there when you need it.
And remember, it's only for retirement.
Right.
Don't dip into it ahead of time.
Don't continually decide, well, we'll use it for this now and put it back, because you don't ever put it back. If you take it out, it's kind of like found money, and you don't think you've got to replace it.
What do you have things on your bucket list that you'd like to do?
I would love to go into the New England states. It's something I've never done. It's an area of the country I haven't seen, and I would love to do that. That's one of the few things I think I still have left that's a major thing.
That's a part of the country I've not seen a lot of, but what I've seen, I would like to see more of.
Right.
When you're out and about at the village, do you get out and walk much, or?
A little bit. I don't walk as much as I should. And I haven't been using the indoor pool like I should. So that's something Judy and I are going to look into in the near future, to start going down to the Copeland Center. But it's a beautiful area to walk.
It is.
I should get out.
Well, I'll do an advertisement for the water aerobics.
Okay.
I have really enjoyed it. I've just gotten into it in about the last 6 months.
Okay.
And it's amazing how it helps, and it's not as strenuous a form of exercise.
Right. It's easier on your body to do. And because I have, with all of my years of back injuries, I had done water therapy before. And so they have told me that it would be really good for me. And now that I'm out here, that's the one thing I need to take advantage of that I haven't yet.
And I know recently there was somebody at the pool that was new and was concerned because she didn't swim. But the pool is shallow enough that you can walk and be in it, and that's comfortable. Yeah,
we've been down there because we would go during the reunions and I've gone when my mama was here.
And that's another thing to me that's unique about the villages. There's something for everybody to do.
That's exactly right. That's what Mama would tell people, that, it wasn't being here. She would much rather be at home where she had grown up. But if you couldn't be at home, this was the next best place you could be.
And I've heard other people say that this is as close to heaven as you're going to get before you go.
I can understand that, because that was my thought when I moved to South Carolina, because I wound up in Butterfield Acres because I wasn't old enough to be inside the village after my husband died. And so I told several people when I went to South Carolina, including Judy and Dan, that I would come back when I could live inside an apartment. I wanted it to be where I could pick up the phone and call and say, somebody needs to come fix this.
Mm-hmm. That is a nice feeling.
Yes, it is. And have no yard work to worry about.
And but have the advantage of looking out at the pretty landscaping and do that.
Yeah, and enjoy all the decorations that somebody else has had to put up.
And it's about time they'll take him down for another year.
I know, we'll miss it.
But that's why they're special when they come back again.
That's right.
Anything else you'd like to tell our viewers today, Judy?
I don't think so. I think, it's just that Dowling Park is a truly wonderful place to be. And it really does, it surprises me sometimes to realize what all they do for the individual. So it really is a home. And it does have that small town community feel still, which I think you asked about the area. That's something I think the area lacks now. We no longer have that true feeling of community. But Dowling Park still has that feeling.
It does. I grew up in a small town, and that was one of the things that attracted me to not live in Jacksonville any longer or work in Jacksonville. So this was nice for me. Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll come back.